one of the things that we've really been focusing on in the last year especially is making the process easier for our veterinarians. They are very busy. They have a lot sort of on their shoulders. We want to give them the tools to be as efficient and thorough as they can be. And so we've developed a Lasix app. We developed what we call the MedEnt app, where actually veterinarians can enter all of the veterinary information on treatments, protocols, et cetera, that will be uploaded directly to the HISA portal. We've also developed a model called HISA Check, which is essentially a product that evaluates every horse and every race card every day against 46 risk factors and assigns a risk profile to every horse. What we do is we give the regulatory veterinarians access to that. And so what they can do is use it to help them decide, which horses they're going to look at first, which horses they might focus on or might want to see again. And it's obviously something they use in combination with their own exam, but it still, I think, is a helpful tool to allow them to really be more efficient with their time. And the last thing we have is something called HISA Insight, which essentially takes all the information we have on any particular horse, their treatments, their medications, their layoffs, their performances, and puts it into one distilled image, like one distilled frame that a veterinarian can look at very quickly to sort of get a feel for what's happened with that horse. And this morning, actually, I shared a new project in development, which is an AI tool, which will allow veterinarians to essentially ask what we call Buttercup, our AI tool, a question about any horse, and Buttercup will deliver the answer. So you could say, when was Ripken's last IA treatment? You'll get the answer right away. How long was Ripken's last layoff period? You'll get the answer right away. So that's a tool that we also hope will be really helpful for veterinarians. So the algorithm, it looks at a number of different metrics across the board. It looks at, the last time the horse had a bad outcome in a race. It looks at, obviously, any pre-existing injury, veterinary treatment, medications, layoffs. Even considers whether or not the horse is a stallion or a gelding or a mare, because that has different risk profiles, performance, et cetera. So there are many of them. Obviously, there are 46, but they're not necessarily all weighted the same. Based on the AI tool that incorporates machine learning, the model weights each factor separately based on how important the data has shown that factor to be in predicting an outcome. And now we're on our second model that is more sophisticated than the first. So we hope to continue to really, develop and progress. It looks at training, it looks at medical, it looks at racing, it looks at, as I said, like layoff periods, it looks at the trainer. We also have a mini model inside the model that assesses the trainer's risk profile. And that risk profile is also incorporated into the horse's risk profile. It's a complete, game changer. It really is. I mean, the speed at which technology is developing, especially AI and AI tools, has been, incredible. And that has really given us an opportunity, because we have so much data that we've been collecting, to really leverage that data for the industry's benefit. So we obviously want to work collaboratively with a lot of these groups, in particular Grayson, that's done a phenomenal job over the years. Because we're collecting so much data, we want our rules to be governed by or impacted by the actual data that we're seeing and the analytics that come out of that data, that we think it makes sense to be engaging with these organizations to make sure that they have the information that we have, so that we're essentially doing research in the right direction. And one of the examples is exercise-associated sudden death in horses. That's really a black box. No one globally or locally knows what causes sudden death in horses. And so given that 16% of our racing fatalities are sudden death, being able to have some insight into what the risk factors are, what might cause a horse to have a cardiac event, has the potential to be really impactful in terms of reducing fatalities. They are extremely rare, but they nonetheless make up 16% of our racing fatalities. the margin to improve is going to be slimmer and slimmer, and we're going to have to continue to look for any slight improvement or any possibility of moving things in the right direction. So our current exercise-associated sudden death working group is made up of international experts. So it's not just Americans. We have experts from all over the world who have an interest in this and are conducting research, so we can all sort of bring our research together. And actually, one of the first meetings was at the IFHA meeting last year in June at Woodbine in Canada, which was an IFHA veterinary research meeting. IFHA is, of course, the International Federation of Horse Racing Authorities. And so that was really a gathering of international experts. And from that gathering, essentially the mandate of the working group was really crystallized and moved forward. Every time, I don't have the opportunity to go that often to some of these events just because we've got so much we need to address here in the U.S. But I am always told that they're just so thrilled that we now have a governing body, that they're so thrilled that there's now like one entity that they can speak to about these issues, and that they really believe that America now deserves a seat at the table. I think also if you were to ask the sales companies, or you were to ask the Breeders' Cup, there's been a very meaningful increase in international buyers coming to buy horses in the U.S. and a meaningful increase in international horses participating in the Breeders' Cup. And what we hear from those international owners and breeders is that they have faith now in the U.S. and that when they actually bring their horses, they are competing on a level playing field, and that there is, essentially clean sport being enforced. One area that the industry has dramatically underperformed and underdelivered is providing services, essentially support and benefits really across the board to jockeys. They are one of our two athletes, and they are independent contractors. They don't have the benefit of a union or the benefit of having an employer. They have the Guild, who's been a strong advocate for jockeys, and we like to work closely with the Guild. But really, their issues have been underrepresented, in my view. And so it really has been terrific to be able to band together a number of us who really care about these issues and advocate for jockeys. And, just in September, we had a group of a number of retired jockeys, actually one current jockey or two current jockeys, and a group of us who were on Capitol Hill meeting with legislators to essentially explain that jockeys are just like any other professional athlete, and they should be entitled to the same protections, the same benefits, the same funding. And it was a really, really meaningful initiative, and that was the first time it had ever been done for jockeys. Even if all the racetracks are satisfying our criteria for ambulances and all of the equipment, it doesn't mean the people who are inside those ambulances will know what to do in the moment and will actually, work as efficiently and as professionally as possible. And we all know that, how quickly you address a jockey's needs or injuries has a significant impact on the ultimate outcome. And so we've been working with a company called Sports Medicine Concepts. They're actually the company that trained the NFL that ultimately led to the successful outcome for Damar Hamlin. And we've been having them sort of look at some of the procedures for racetracks. We have some concerns about their protocols to help us reform them, come up with a standard best practice, and then also do some simulations to make sure that everyone knows what to do. I remember one time there was an accident in the racetrack, and the guy in the ambulance was scared of horses. So it wasn't really a great fit, So we have to really be sure that people are ready to do what they need to do in the moment. We've been able to establish for the first time a national concussion protocol and policy. We have a national medical director, Dr. Pete Hester, and he works with jockeys. We work with a company called HeadCheck, where jockeys are required to do a baseline concussion every couple of years. And then that way, if they have a head injury, we have the baseline x-rays, we have the baseline images. We can send them immediately to whatever trauma center they're at. They can look to see what the potential changes are. That's really been an important initiative, and it's been met with a lot of support. And we also have now a uniform concussion protocol. So every track has to operate in the same way when a jockey has a potential head injury. One of the things that I was really shocked at when I started, working in this position was the amount of abuse that jockeys take on social media. And I think it's worse than a lot of professional athletes because the betting component is enhanced. Even though there's sports betting, it's not like, our sport is based around the gambler. And so it doesn't surprise me that jockeys, between that and, having to make weight and the danger and pressures from owners and trainers, doesn't surprise me that jockeys would have some struggles. And because not all jockeys have medical insurance, there's never been universal access to mental health care amongst jockeys. And so we partnered with a company called OnRise, working with the Guild. And OnRise is an athlete-focused telehealth mental health program where a jockey can call up. Obviously, it's completely confidential. They'll be matched with somebody who speaks their language. So even if it's a Spanish-speaking jockey, they'll get a Spanish-speaking therapist. Depending on their needs, they might get an athlete peer if they want to talk about post-racing, creating a resume, dealing with the challenges of a professional athlete. They might be matched up with another professional athlete, or they might be matched up with a therapist or a psychiatrist, depending on how serious the mental health issues are. And so there's a range of services available. And we're so happy that we now have this. We've gotten very positive feedback from jockeys. And even though we don't know who's using it, we know it's being used. The public wants to know you're trying. They're not going to hold you to unrealistic goals and expectations for the most part, but they want to know you care and that you're doing your best. And, I think that, genuinely the industry can now say for the most part that we are doing our best and we care, and we're really uniting to find the best solutions that we can to get the best outcomes.
We are looking at the data that's captured from HISA with all of their new IT initiatives. So especially veterinarian records and using other industry data that exists and talking to, groups like Encompass and Track Manager. We work closely with the HISA Next Generation Committee and the Advisory Committee, and they have a subcommittee about using big data. And all that data helps us to better understand and even better inform our testing plan or our investigative strategy. The HIWU accreditation model, in a lot of ways, it's similar, but I would call it more robust than the RMTC accreditation. And that's not to in any way, downgrade the RMTC accreditation model. The significant difference between HIWU and RMTC is that we are managing the accreditation while also being the sole client to these laboratories. So we're directing the sample analysis. And so there's a better way, a more robust way to check their performance on a more consistent basis. So, under the RMTC accreditation model, there was a series of quality assurance samples that would be conducted, and we're just taking that to another level. So in addition to what's called single blind samples, where samples arrive and the lab knows that these are test samples, now we're conducting double blind samples, and those are being done multiple times a month. So double blinds are meant to just look like any ordinary sample collected at a racetrack. They're actually coordinated by our staff and thrown into the sample collection cooler, and the laboratory knows no difference, that it's a test sample to test their performance. And then the third step of that is a pass sample exchange. So negative samples that are called at one lab as negative, we tell them to go get those stored samples, what's left of them, and send them off to another laboratory, and they get reanalyzed for performance check to make sure that we're always checking each lab against each other. They're no longer working in individual silos for individual state racing commissions. Well, the model is actually built off of the World Anti-Doping Agency and their accreditation. So this model has existed for nearly 25 years in human anti-doping sports. So that that's both for Olympic level athlete or sports testing programs, professional leagues, things like that. They all use WADA accredited laboratories in the human side. And so we are using that same model. So we're not really recreating the wheel, but it's been a proven accreditation model for a long time. The ultimate goal is harmonization of the laboratories, harmonization and collaboration. The labs, they worked together in the past, but not at this level. And we meet with the lab directors every week. We talk about things that we're seeing. We talk about ensuring that positive tests in one jurisdiction or one track would be called positive in another, right? Out of fairness to horsemen, or the vice versa. We're always testing their performance. So, it's harmonization is key to what not only the laboratories, but the entire program itself. We have all the confidence. We have 4 program laboratories currently, and there is, conversations under the RMTC model. Illinois could re-achieve their accreditation. University of Kentucky, I think, is still working towards re-achieving their accreditation. But our other program laboratories have done a great job to, stay in compliance with the accreditation model under the RMTC, moving towards our accreditation. But they're able to take on all the volumes. I've reported this week that we're very pleased with the results turnaround time that we're getting from all of our laboratories. So yeah, we're in a really comfortable spot.